What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 11 top 20 quarterback rankings. Posted the running backs and wide receivers yesterday. I'll also have the tight ends and defenses coming out today. But let's just dive right into Tier 1. These are your studs, regardless of matchup. They are really strong high-end QB1s. It's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. These guys are currently top 3 in fantasy points per game. Allen, in my opinion, has the best matchup. But even Lamar against the Browns, Mahomes against the Broncos, still love these dudes as your QB1. Then moving into Tier 2, starting off this tier with Drake May going up against the Jets. Drake May kind of back-to-back, somewhat underwhelming games, but his rougher games this season have still been very solid. He's the quarterback 5 in points per game. Jets allowing the 9th most points per game to the quarterback position. And that's like a full season sample where now they're down, their 2 best defensive players post-trade deadline. And then the Patriots are tied for the second highest implied point total. So I think this is a really good spot here for May. Then I've got Jalen Hurts going up against the Lions. Week 10 was actually his second worst fantasy game of the season. It was a pretty rough overall offensive game between the Eagles and the Packers, but Hurts is still the quarterback 6 in points per game. Really nice mid-tier QB1 play. Then I've got Justin Herbert. I don't really have a ton to say about Herbert. The Jaguars have been a pretty good matchup for quarterbacks, 5th in points per game allowed. Justin Herbert's just a dog. He continues to produce, no matter what's going on the offensive line. Really strong QB1 still. And then the last guy in this tier doesn't have a great matchup, but I feel like you just got to keep rolling with Matthew Stafford here. In his last 3 games, he has thrown for 13 total pass TDs, threw for 5, 4, and 4. He's put up at least 26 fantasy points in all 3 of those games. So just got to ride the hot hand here. Matthew Stafford playing the quarterback position at a very, very high level. Starting off Tier 3, I've got Dak Prescott going up against the Raiders. I did consider ranking Dak higher. What kind of held me back here was just he hasn't been all that great over the past 2 weeks. 22 total points. He had scored at least 22 total points in his previous 3 games before the last 2. Cowboys always going to be up there in terms of their implied points. They're at 4th. Could definitely see a bounce back here against the Raiders. Then at quarterback 9, I have Jackson Dart. Now, it doesn't seem like Dart is trending towards playing. There's reports that Jameis Winston is likely going to get the start. In terms of the Giants' weapons, that's a great sign. I'd much rather have Winston back there than Russell Wilson to be the backup. But I'm going to keep Dart in here as if he is playing. If he were to suit up, this is where he'd slot in. It's not a good matchup against the Packers, but the man has just been extremely productive no matter what's going on around him. 22.9 points per game as the starter. Even in Week 10, where he left early, I want to say it was the 3rd quarter, he still put up 26.3 fantasy points before the injury. So I'd be cool with them kind of holding him out. He's kind of taken a lot of damage early on in the season, but if he does play, nice back end QB1. Then the quarterback he faced off with last week, Caleb Williams going up against the Vikings. Caleb's had back-to-back big games, 38.7 against the Bengals, 25.1 against the Giants. And then this is a pretty tough defense going up against the Vikings, but Caleb actually had a really strong week 1 against this team, 24.2 points. The Bears offense have kind of been good matchup merchants where they've really put up, gaudy numbers against some of the rougher defenses in the league. The Vikings have been the one solid unit that they've actually had a decent game against, at least for Caleb specifically. So I think he's fine. It's definitely not a great matchup, but back-end QB1, in my opinion, is fair. Then we've got Joe Flacco going up against the Ravens, and Flacco's just been a stud with the Bengals. 25 points per game in his 4 starts. He's averaging 43.3 pass attempts per game. The Bengals are solid underdogs in this one, potentially expecting another shootout. I will point out, this Bengals defense, when you look at the metrics for how they do against different positions, they're typically not great, right? But this is not the same defense we saw early on in the season. They've gotten healthier. They've really kind of locked in. So it's not a good matchup here for Flacco, but the volume's going to be there. He has the weapons. He has been super productive. Quarterback 12, Baker Mayfield going up against the Bills. Had a nice bounce back in Week 10, threw for 273 yards, 3 touchdowns. It's not a good matchup, though, against the Bills. Bills are bottom 4 in points per game allowed to the quarterback position. And then my final guy here in Tier 3, I've got Jared Goff going up against the Eagles. We saw Dan Campbell take over the play calling, and This Lions offense was firing on all cylinders. Jared Goff, 25 of 33, 320 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs also had a huge day on the ground. So I do think this offense is trending up with Dan Campbell taking over there. Kicking off tier 4, I have Jordan Love going up against the Giants. It's been back-to-back bad games out of Jordan Love, under 10 points, in back-to-back contests. I do think this is a get-right spot here against the Giants. The Giants are 4th in points per game allowed to the quarterback position. The lack of weapons, a lot of guys in and out of the lineup, definitely seems to have kind of hindered Jordan Love, but I think he can get back to it here against the Giants. Quarterback 15, Sam Darnold, going up against the Rams. In his last 5 games, he has gone for 20-plus points in 3 of the 5, and then he has scored under 9 points in 2 of the 5. So a little bit boomer bust. This is not a great matchup here against the Rams, but the reason he didn't have a great week 10 was because they were just up by so much early on. The passing volume just wasn't there. Now, he also turned the ball over a few times, which isn't ideal, but the volume was just not going to be there for some sort of massive fantasy day. So it's a tough matchup, but should be a lot more of a competitive game script. And then the last guy in this tier, I'm going with Aaron Rodgers going up against the Bengals. Now, he's coming off a really rough week 10. The entire Steelers offense looks pretty brutal, but this is a fantastic matchup against the Bengals. They are 2nd in points per game allowed to the quarterback position. The Steelers have the highest implied point total per Vegas. So I do think this is a get-right spot here for Aaron Rodgers. And then the 5th and final tier, I've got Marcus Mariota, Bo Nix, Mac Jones, and J.J. McCarthy. Marcus Mariota, 16.7 points per game as the starter. Decent matchup against the Dolphins. They're allowing the 8th most points per game to the quarterback position. Bo Nix, fantasy-wise, he's been a pretty decent quarterback, but from a real-life perspective, he has just been super inconsistent. This is not a good matchup against the Chiefs. And then the Broncos are bottom 6 in terms of their implied points this week. So don't feel great about playing Bo. Then I've got Mac Jones going up against the Cardinals. Not a good matchup for quarterbacks, bottom 6 in points per game allowed. But Mac Jones has just been pretty steady as the starter, 16.3 points per game. And then the 49ers way up there, 6th highest implied point total this week. And then the quarterback 20 spot, I debated between a few different dudes. I ended up settling with J.J. McCarthy. Now, he hasn't been great. I think he's been worse from a real-life perspective than fantasy. But in his 3 full games, he is averaging 18.6 points per game. This is a good matchup against this Bears defense. They're allowing the 6th most points per game to the quarterback position. So I do think this could be a matchup where McCarthy looks a little bit more competent at the quarterback spot. But that is going to wrap it up for my top 20 rankings. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.